Someone is attempting to rank Doctor Who Season 9.
That is to be expected. Are you attempting to locate the person ranking this season?
We're trying now. If we find them, what would you like us to do with them?
Whoever is attempting to rank Doctor Who Season 9 is an enemy of the Daleks. All enemies of the Daleks must be exterminated. Exterminate them, exterminate them, exterminate them, exterminate them, exterminate them. Hang on, what if they rank Day of the Daleks first? Then they will be spared. But if they do not, they must be exterminated. Exterminate, exterminate, exterminate.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. Welcome to my Doctor Who Season 9 ranking, filming after the Time Monster review, so that's why everything's still the same, only a few minutes later. So, Doctor Who Season 9, I think this is probably the weakest Jon Pertwee season, but maybe my opinion will change after Season 11. I think 10 is a stronger season as a whole. Actually, my opinion might change after that. I think 7 and 8 overall are stronger, but we'll see. I'll give my... which season's my least favourite of the Pertwee era after Season 11 happens. But like I say, I think I enjoyed the season a bit more this time round. I certainly enjoyed Day of the Daleks more than ever. I liked the Curse of Peladon, maybe not as much as the previous time, but certainly a little bit more than usual. Sea Devils I've liked the most since first viewing, or first couple of viewings. The Mutants is the only one I think has actually gone down, in my opinion, and the Time Monster has also gone up a little bit. So, there you go. Season 9 might not actually be my least favourite season, but we'll have to wait until after the entire era is over before I make that final decision. I will probably still say Season 7 is my favourite by that point, but we'll see how it goes. I do think 9 is overall weaker than 7 and 8, I'll say that. I mean, we don't have a colony in space in this season, but we don't exactly have a spearhead from space, or Inferno either. So, or Daemons. So getting started with the list. So here's the stories, as I've already mentioned. Day of the Daleks, the Curse of Peladon, the Sea Devils, the Mutants, and the Time Monster. And I'm also going to be mentioning the Day of the Daleks special edition, even though that the original story itself is going to be counted on the list. But the special edition will also contribute to its position in a way in some shape or form, or at least be an honourable mention. Now, I'll contribute it to the point, and the same will go to other special editions or alternative versions of stories out there with Enlightenment, shorter special edition, 5 Doctors special edition, Resurrection of the Daleks original 4-part version, Planet of Fire Special Edition, Battlefield Special Edition, and Curse of Fenric Special Edition, all contributing alongside their original edition, the original broadcast stories, or in Resurrection of the Daleks' in this case, just broadcast versions. So they'll all be contributing to their own stories as well. In fact, this is the only one of those special editions that actually isn't made into a movie. Unlike the other ones I mentioned, -5, well, not Resurrection, of course, because that's the original version, and 5 Doctors was already a feature-length story, but the other ones are movies, whether extended ones or shortened ones. But Day of the Daleks, out of all of those, is not a movie version, and the same can be said for the Sharda's animated edition. That's another one I'll talk about, the Sharda 1992 Linking Material version and Sharda 2017 animated version in the case of the second one again. As I've already done that one on the main channel. But yeah, so Day of the Daleks has got a special edition, but it's not really a movie version, unlike Sharda, Planet of Fire, Enlightenment, Battlefield, or Curse of Fenric. I don't know why. Anyway, so getting on to the list, it's starting off with number 5. Now, number 5 probably won't be a surprise to anyone who's actually watched the reviews. This story, or even just listen to what I said about how I felt about the stories this time round, and yeah, this story just, I didn't have much to say on it. I didn't find it enjoyable. I didn't find the story that amazing. I thought it was okay, but I just couldn't quite get into it. Number 5 is The Mutants. Not to be confused with the much better Season 1 Dalek story, first Dalek story of originally the same name before it was it became The Daleks, or can also be known as The Dead Planet, and originally The Survivors. But it was originally The Mutants, and it sometimes can be also known as The Mutants, which is going to be complicated. It's a bit like Torchwood Day 1, although in that one's case they did make one. The second one is Children of Earth Day 1, which distinguishes it from Day 1 from Series 1. So they've distinguished that, and it's a good thing that the original The Mutants is now The Daleks, and that makes a lot more sense. For my thoughts on that story, please check out that story's review. And this one is the true The Mutants. But that being said, I didn't really think this was a good story. I've explained some. I thought it was all right. I mean, it's got some decent stuff. But I don't know. I think this is just a slog. I mean, it didn't drag like Space Pirates, for example. It didn't even feel as. I think Curse of Peladon might even have been almost as slow, but I don't think it didn't engage me. That's all. It didn't engage me. The villain, I hated him. I didn't mention it in the review, but I did edit in a text thing at one point that I cheered when he died, and yes, I bloody cheered when the guy was evaporated by Spirit Kai. That's the way I'm calling it. That's what I'm calling him, Spirit Kai. And Jack McCulloch was saying that the Time Monster was silly. It had quite a lot of silly moments, and yeah, it does have a couple of silly moments. But I would think Spirit Kai is actually more sillier than anything in the Time Monster. Oh my goodness! And also more silly than anything else in this season. Yeah, I think this story's also got some silly moments. I don't think it's even that serious. I think it's trying to be a camp story. I mean, not trying to be camp, but it just comes up. I don't think it's trying to be serious either, unlike Sea Devils, which is a bit more serious. I would even say Curse of Peladon's quite serious. I don't know. It just doesn't click for me, and that's why I didn't give it that high of a score. But I did like some bits. John Pertwee and Katie Manning continue to be great, and I think the other actors do some pretty good job. There is some good story stuff. That Professor Strongergaard, who I think that's his name, the name I got wrong in the review, he was actually a pretty good character. And I liked the two overlords, the two guards who turned to the Doctor's side, even though I did think naming the black guy Cotton was insensitive. At least slightly as insensitive as calling one of the Bond villains high fat, this rich Thai tycoon from Thailand. I thought that was slightly insensitive, calling him high fat. And I think doing the same here with calling this black guy Cotton is insensitive. So that's some issues I had with the story, but mostly I just didn't engage with it. That's all. I just didn't find it that fun. Okay, moving on to number 4. Number 4 is a story that I thought worked a lot better than the Mutants. But out of the remaining 4 stories of this season, I think this is the one I enjoyed the least out of the good 4. The Mutants was an okay, but out of the good 4, this is the one I enjoyed the least, and that is actually kind of surprising, knowing what happens, and it is the Curse of Peladon. Considering this is a very political story in space, the politics actually take a little bit of a setback when all the old rituals come in to play, although the politics are very up front and centre. Should we join the Galactic Federation or not? Will these ancient rituals and old ways and all that jazz get in the way? Should we stick by them? Oh, and also there's this monster called this creature called Agador who's going around killing people. Well, a person. And you got this really paranoid high priest basically trying to sabotage everything, and this greedy little skull-headed creature in a box. I suppose he's a Max Capricorn prototype, trying to just get his own little greedy little deal. But I will say this: it did make the Ice Warriors good guys for the first time in the show. I mean, I'm not sure how they would have been represented in Lords of the Red Planet, but certainly in the two Ice Warrior stories we have seen before, they have been the bad guys, full on. No argument about it. This time around, we actually see some some goodness in them. Something that is incorporated into the expanded media and into the new series. There is some good in them, and they're not outright villains like in the first two stories. And even in Monster of Peladon, I will say, when we have a rogue faction that go evil in that story, but most of the planets are good guys. So I'll even say that one. So the first two Ice Warrior stories, I think this story tops that one of making the Ice Warriors actually look a bit more like allies in some places. So by the time you get to expanded media and the new series, that's when them being both good and bad characters, goodies and baddies, or kind of very mixed together into one, comes into play, especially in Empress of Mars. As it's very you may very much notice that story has them both good and bad, and they kind of gel together. Not so much in Cold War because the Skaldrex is going on a rampage, but certainly in Empress of Mars. Alpha Centauri, yes, annoying, but tolerable compared to other characters. Not so much in this story, but certainly in the sequel at least, and other stories this season. Same for what's his face, the one that was having the secret deal, the one with the skull head. Archuos. This is actually not too bad. This little story about politics in space on this planet, deciding what it wants to do. It's actually not that bad. It's just that I think it just does it at a bit of a slow pace. Part 3 is just centered on the Doctor having to wait to have his trial of combat, and then he meets up with Agador at one point. And then part 4, there's supposedly the Civil War, but it's only partly shown. We don't see Auton organising people. He's not campaigning. We don't even get that much fight stuff. And it's not completely executed that well, to be honest. So I really think the first 2 episodes are probably the closest to the political shit of the story. But overall, I think it's a nice little story, but it's not really going to be one that's going to be praised for its everything. It's okay. It's good. It's just not much. I think it has some wasted opportunities, and that more could have been done with the story and the angle and the ideas. Okay, apologies for the noises you can hear. Number 3 is actually a story I like, but everybody else doesn't. The Time Monster. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why people aren't so keen on this story. I mean, Jack McCullough gave his reasons in his review that I gave him a shout out, and a mention in that review. Shout out to him again for this ranking. So there you go, Jack. You got 2 shout outs in a row. So I got his points. I can see his points, and yeah, I can agree with some of those points. Like Baby Benton, I didn't find it cringy, but I just think actually it's not that very necessary. I laughed at the end where he popped up naked, but I think the scene, it could have been cut. It could have been cut and made more room for Atlantean stuff, or just the 2 scientists working on the machine again. Now thinking about it, I think we could have a bit more use of the Master's time scoop, I suppose. We could call it like what we have in the 5 Doctors, taking stuff out of time and using that a bit more often. in the story. What happens to that guy he gets control of in part 2? What happened part 1, part 2? What does he do with that guy? Where does he go? Does he just die? Does he get evaporated? I don't know. It's strange. Kronos, the look of Kronos actually isn't that great. I mean, the character sounds a bit scary. Maybe that's what happened to the guy who died. But Kronos just looks like a man in a bird suit with a knight helmet on top. Looks a bit odd, awkward, and there are some dodgy effects in this story. There's some dodgy effects in the Mutants as well, but that had a scene where a guy was sucked into space, so yeah, it was going to look dodgy. This time round, it's a more Earth-based story for the first 3 and a bit episodes, and then episode 5 and half of 6 are in Atlantis, and the rest of 6 are partially some of 6 and a little bit of 5 are in present day world, and then most of 4 is in the TARDISes, and part of 6 is in the no space. So yeah, I think the story may have been a little too long for its own good. I think it could have worked better at 5, but I do think it is a fun, enjoyable story, and I do urge people to give it another try. I mean, it's much better than the story that came before it, Cough Cough Mutants. But yeah, you might like it again, or like it on another viewing. I mean, it's not perfect by no means. I mean, it's not exactly Inferno, is it? But it's I don't even know if I would consider Inferno perfect subjectively. Objectively, probably, but subjectively, I prefer the Daemons. So it's not as good as those two, but certainly it's still a pretty decent finale. In fact, I would even say this is actually a pretty decent finale story. We still got good final finale stories. The only one I actually haven't liked is The Reign of Terror. I think that's the only Doctor Who finale at this point of going in order that I haven't liked. And whilst I think there'll be some later on, there's certainly going to be by the time we get to Series 9 of the new series. But in terms of classic, give us certainly by season 21. Season 21 will certainly have one, but we'll see about the rest about then. Spoiler alert: Sharda will not be one of the bad ones. But if you take that one out, then the story that would have come before, that does come before it, well, certainly very much might be. So yeah, as Time Monster, I don't think it's a bad story. I actually liked it, and you know, the good finales continue. We still have good season finales, minus the Reign of Terror. And yeah, I know lots of people like that story, but I personally don't. So yeah, I like the Time Monster. You like the Reign of Terror, unless you're one of the people who doesn't like the Reign of Terror nor the Time Monster. Then you're in our middle gap, or you're someone who likes the Reign of Terror and the Time Monster, in which case you're also in the middle. So then, but if you're a person who likes the Reign of Terror but not the Time Monster, then we'll agree to disagree. But if you're someone who likes both or doesn't like both, fair enough. And if you like the Time Monster but not the Reign of Terror, give me a call. We'll have a chat. So yeah, that's the Time Monster. Have a couple of problems with it, but on the whole, fun for the most parts. Number 2. Now, I put this story above the Time... I originally had the Time Monster above this story, but I put this one back above it after my rethinks of Time Monster and all that. And, you know, I think story-wise, this one is better. So, that's why I put it above that, just purely because the story is better, and also, I think it takes advantage of the villains a bit more. Number 2 is the Sea Devils. Saying that, we don't really get a huge amount of them until part 5. I mean, there is a couple of battle scenes in part 4, them attacking the castle in part 4, and a couple of 1 or 2 Sea Devils around in the first 3 episodes, but most of the attention is on the Master around the middle, and about parts 2, 3, 4. And the Sea Devils do start making a bit more of importance in part 4, part 5. Actually, part 1 is a very Master-centered one. Part 2 has a bit more Sea Devil stuff. But, you know, it works, more or less. I mean, maybe it's a bit too Master-centered in part 3. But, you know, it works. And that cliffhanger is really good. Not so much the part 3 into part 4 cliffhanger. That's not so good. Joe's going into the bell and finds something. I think she should have then popped down and said, he's gone. And then that's where we get to the title music, and that's the cliffhanger. So, yeah, it's a bit like in Death to the Daleks, where the Doctor and Bial get to a chessboard, they stop, and we just zoom in on the chessboard and nothing happens. Of course, later in the next episode, we discover that the chessboard is a death trap, but at the cliffhanger, we don't know. Maybe some electrical sparks could have helped indicate that. But that's something for Death to the Daleks. We'll get to that later. In a later season, I should say. But, that's just the thing with this story. But this is not the cliffhanger part 4. But it's not a bad thing. It's just that I would have preferred maybe Joe popping out and then saying he's gone. And that's the cliffhanger. And I think we should have had a bit more of the Sea Devils in the earliest episodes with them, with their plan, with their motivation. Just the stuff we get in parts 5 and 6. Basically, we should have had a little bit more of that in the story, but not really. We don't get so much. But on the whole, this story is pretty good. It's a pretty good story, and it has some great moments and really great stuff. I'm not sure what the point of that submarine subplot was, but I don't know. Gave the Doctor a way out. So, the Sea Devils. I think it was very good. It's just that I did kind of get a little bit bored in the middle about it, but it's still a very good story nonetheless. However, number 1 is the one that I pretty much enjoyed the most, and I think it's also probably got the best story, and it features the return of these guys. Well, first appearances of these guys, and my goodness, I think just yesterday, I just fell in love with this Dalek. I don't know why, but I just love the Gold Dalek. It only makes one more appearance, sadly, in next season, but I just love the Gold Dalek. So you know what my number 1 is? Number 1 is Day of the Daleks. Okay, I'm going to put you guys back. I'm going to put you back. You're actually a Planet of the Dalek. Well, technically you're Day of the Daleks as well, but the packet said you're from Planet of the Daleks, so you're more of a planet one. You are a Day of the Daleks and Frontier in Space Dalek. Now, Day of the Daleks is just a fun, engaging story. Admittedly, there are some things I don't like. I wasn't so keen on those Gunrillas being all shouty, bossy, grumpy in part 2, with them being mean to the Doctor and Joe. I mean, I can understand them not liking Reginald Styles being grumpy about that, but the way they treat the Doctor and Joe is just, it's annoying. I mean, they are nicer in parts 3 and 4 to the Doctor and Joe, but in part 2 they just gone on my nerves a little bit, but not terribly much to make me completely dislike the characters. But that's about it. Oh, and the Dalek voices are shit in the original version. Special edition, Nicholas Briggs, the god of all Dalek voices, pretty much saves the Daleks from that story. But I still think the Daleks themselves are actually really good in the story, and it's some really cool moments. Look, I think the characters, like as I said, I wasn't so keen on the Gunrillas in part 2, but and maybe even a little bit of part 1. But parts 3 and 4, they're actually really good. The Controller is actually quite sympathetic in a way, and it turns out to be an ally in the end instead of an enemy. There's this very Bennick-like guard character, Bennick from Enemy of the World, who's a pretty enjoyable prick. You've got this kind of guard who's almost like him. I think he's just not as fun to watch, but he's only in 2 episodes, so and there are some bored-looking women in this story, but then again, we've gotten used to that. Cough, cough, Miss Kelly from the Seeds of Death. Cough, cough. And it's got some great unit stuff in it as well. It's a great, fun story. It's a really great way to kickstart this season. I think, again, season openers have been pretty great, certainly with John Pertwee's era. There's only about this one I don't like, and there's one I'm on. 2, maybe. Unearthly Child was great for the first episode and not so great for the remaining 3. Planet of Giants, I think, is great. Galaxy 4, I think, is very good. Smugglers, I think, is good. At best. I think It's maybe just above okay. Tomb of the Cybermen is fucking awesome. The Dominators is atrocious, but not as bad as the Space Pirates. Spear in Space is amazing. Terror Mutants is also great, and now we've got another great story with Day of the Daleks, and we're looking forward to season 10's great opener, The Three Doctors. So, yeah, and I'll even say John Pertwee continues having great season openers with The Time Warrior. That might possibly be my favourite story of season 11. Just saying it now. Possibly. Yeah, and it appears that every other season's first story is first or second in the ranking. And you know what? I'm glad about that. So, yeah, Day of the Daleks, great. And the special edition just improves on the original version, as well as the better Dalek voices. You've got the better special effects, and you've got some great new CG exteriors and moments and some new extra stuff in it. My only complaint is that they do cut out some of the original stuff from the story that admittedly could have been cut for necessity or to keep it on in time, but I'll never forgive them for cutting the no complications line that one of the Ogrons says in part 1. I will not forgive them for cutting that line. That was such a great line. And just the delivery, it just works so well. And the fact it was also parodied in Aimless Wandering's audio, More of the Daleks. The Ogron said no complications just before he killed a guy. That was in a pretty dark scene. So, but the way he said it in this story was also really good. So I will not forgive them for cutting that from the special edition. But on the whole, the special edition is slightly better. If they had kept those other bits, or at least that one line, that I will not forgive them for cutting. But if they kept that one line, at least that, better still everything else, but at least that, then it probably would be a 10 out of 10, very much a perfect story, in my opinion, but they cut it. So it's still only a improved 9 out of 10. But I think the story itself is a 9 out of 10. If those Dalek voices were better to begin with, maybe it could have been a 10. But as it stands, it's a 9 out of 10. Thankfully, Michael Wisher will be voicing the Daleks from now on, at least in the Pertwee era. And then Roy Skilton's definitely coming back for Genesis of the Daleks, I think. I don't think Michael Wisher's voicing Daleks in that story, but thankfully Roy Skelton is coming back for that one afterwards. So we're still going to have good Dalek voices. I mean, we're not going to get Nicholas Briggs until 2005, so we may as well sit back and enjoy Roy Skelton, Michael Wisher, David Goodison, okay, maybe not so much David Goodison, and some of the other voices we get in the 70s and 80s. So long, and we can thank God that the ones from this story never came back, and we can look forward to Nicholas Briggs in the new series. So that's my season 9 ranking, and I'll recap my list. Number 5 is The Mutants, number 4 is The Curse of Peladon, number 3 is The Time Monster, number 2 is The Sea Devils, and number 1 is Day of the Daleks. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Season 10 will be kicking start with another great story, The Three Doctors. And I'll see you guys then, or whatever's coming up next. Goodbye. Oh, you're over there now. Well, I've just come back from watching the video, and you'll be glad to know the guy ranking Doctor Who Season 9 puts Day of the Daleks as number 1.
That is acceptable. Unfortunately, your usefulness is now over.
What? But I helped you! I helped you!
Yes, you helped us. And now the time has come for you to be exterminated.
Who knows? Perhaps I've helped to exterminate you.
Now then, let us sit back and watch Season 10. Yay! Yay!
Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. the Time Monster. Really? How he gets... well, not how he gets... What? But, you know, it's not awful. It's a very good... Season 9 ranking opening sketch. Action.
That is to be expected. Are you attempting to locate the person Excuse me. Excuse me. That is acceptable, but unfortunately, your uterus... Excuse me. Now then!
Excuse me?
Yes, you helped us, and now the time has come for you to be exterminated!
Damn it, I knocked my Daleks over. Who knows? Perhaps I helped to exterminate you. Who knows? Perhaps I found a way to exterminate you. Who knows? Perhaps I've managed to find a way to exterminate you. Who knows? Perhaps I've helped in exterminating you. Who knows? Perhaps I've helped to exterminate you. Yeah, let's do that one again. And we'll be up in a second. Right, that's a wrap on season 9 ranking sketch. Next time, season 10.